So a while back, I remember hearing this quote that basically said by Jim Rohns, if you're going to dream, you might as well dream big. And this year I learned two very valuable lessons from my rich uncle. And the first one is a lot of people go broke once they accomplish their dream and they figure out, hey, this wasn't all it was actually meant to be. I know people close to me and my family that their entire dream for a very long time was just owning a home, buying a home. And then they buy this home that's super expensive and they spend a lifetime trying to pay it off and they don't really see why they wanted to own a home in the first place. Like, it's just this idea, it's just this dream. And then once you have it, you don't know exactly what it's actually doing. And in this case, it's going to be stealing your wealth. Now, number two is, I also learned this other lesson this year, which is basically, a lot of the times, what you need to do to be happy is not going to feel good. And I realized that when it comes to, for example, paying off debt, going to the gym, getting your life together, getting organized, all these things, none of them in reality feel good, but they do bring happiness because eventually they make life a lot easier. Now, what does all this stuff have to do with a wealth killer like buying a home when in reality everyone says that owning a home is actually a good idea? Well, I bought my first home last year. I actually own it, and guess what? It's fully remodeled, it's nice, and on top of that, it is fully paid off. But guess what? It is not my dream home. It's not the home that I actually wanted. Whenever I thought about owning a home, I thought of something expensive with like 3 car garages, with like 6 bedrooms, with a lot of stuff. And in reality, I realized that what I wanted and what I needed were two very different things. And if you get these things correct, in reality, a home can be a blessing for you. But if you don't get it correct, a home can just end up being one of the #1 wealth killer. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly the cons of having a home, the pros, and how to actually do it the right way. Now, as always, guys, like this video and top about also subscribe and hit the bell to get notified. Now, #1, guys, in order to understand exactly what a wealth killer is, we gotta understand exactly what a wealth creator is. And in reality, it's just the opposite. When you think about a wealth killer, it's something that doesn't build wealth, right? Something that takes money away from your pocket. A wealth creator would be something that actually puts money into your pocket. It actually grows your net worth. And in reality, the #1 key when it comes to building wealth is not the amount of money you make, but it's in reality the amount of disposable income you have because of how frugal and diligent you actually are with your money. And in English, all that means is, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you actually get to keep, you actually set aside for the purpose of actually building wealth. Now, this sounds simple enough to the point where you're saying like, hey, all right, if I set aside this much money and I buy a home, eventually that money would be worth more. But in reality, it doesn't work like that. When you think about a lot of things that steal your wealth, if I told you, hey, I want you to give me money, and in 5 years, I'm going to give you half that money back, and that is it. You would say, I'm not going to do that. That's going to destroy my wealth. Because if I gave you $100, you gave back 50 in 5 years, that's a bad deal. Well, people sign up for that all the time via a car loan. Whenever you subscribe to something that takes away from your wealth, that returns to you a negative amount, that is called a wealth killer. That's the house. Now, if I told you, for example, hey, I want you to sign up for this mortgage, it's 30 years from now, and 30 years later, I'm going to give you basically the same amount of money back. You'll probably say, no, that doesn't make any sense. I want to make more money because that's the way it should be, right? That's an investment. So when people think about a home, they think about a home being an investment, but when people actually sit down and do the math, a home is not an investment. A home is actually something else that I'll tell you by the end of this video, but overall, it doesn't actually return to you a positive return because of all the things associated with actually owning a home. And if I told you, hey, I'm going to invest money for you, and at the end of those 20, 30, 40 years, I give you back, for example, a third of the profits, I keep a third, and the government keeps a third, you would probably be a little mad because it's your capital and I'm taking so much of it. But a lot of people, they sign up for a lot of things that steal their wealth, and that's what I want you guys to avoid. So here are some of the cons that no one really talks about when it comes to actually owning a home. First of all, owning a home is going to be an ongoing expense for the life of the home. You know what I mean? It's like, at least when you have kids, you kind of like take care of them for like those 18 years. Then they grow up, they become adults, they become healthy, they have marriages, have homes. But it's kind of like eventually those kids you spend a lot of money on, they grow up, become adults, and become self-sufficient, right? That's awesome. But a home is not like that. A home is something you buy, and show me a person that has a home and I'll show you a person that has a lifelong expense, okay? Doesn't matter if the home is paid off, you have taxes involved, insurance involved, you gotta fix something, leaky roof, you have to remodel, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's always going to be an ongoing expense. Now, that's not a bad thing per se. It's just a part of the character of the asset you're buying, but you have to take this into account because a lot of folks think that when I buy a home, the cost is gonna be $100K. And then 30 years when I sell it, I'll make maybe like $100,000 more. No, in those 30 years, you're gonna spend a bunch of money. And that's money you could have invested. So when you do the math, in reality, because of all the phantom costs, those are costs that you kind of don't see, according to Ramit Sethi, guess what? All those costs are going to make the profit you made vanish because there's so many costs associated with owning a home. Number two, owning a home is expensive. You know, anything that requires you to basically sign up for a 15 to 30 year term contract loan is going to be expensive. Again, this is not a problem per se, okay? Because guess what? There are different homes out there. But the number one thing is when you think about a home and the price of the home, you never want to think about the payments. Okay, that's a terrible idea. You never want to say, Tommy, yeah, I know this home back here costs $724,000, but when I go right here to the estimated payments, it's only about $5,000. I make a good income, so I can afford this home. In reality, that's a terrible idea. You never want to go based on the payments. You want to go based on the actual home price and see, hey, can I actually afford to buy something that's like 9 times my annual income or like 10 times my annual income? And for most people, the answer is going to be no, a whopping no. But for the bank, it's always going to be yes. If you can afford the payments, then we're happy because as long as you pay us interest, everything is going to be fine. Now, number 3 is it takes away from your flexibility. A home, yes, it provides stability, but it also takes away from your flexibility and also liquidity. What that means is once you own a home, you can't just say, well, guess what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna go ahead and grab my home and put it over here in this state. You can't do that anymore. On top of that, you can't just say, hey, I'm gonna basically go ahead and take the money out of my home. Well, unless you get a HELOC, and that's probably not a good idea because now you're doing some stupid stuff, but you don't want to do that. But the point is, a home is not as liquid as cash or stocks, stuff like that. And that's just, again, a part of the character of the asset you're buying. But overall, here is a personal story I'm going to share with you guys just to kind of like build in this instinct for you guys, okay? A lot of people out there, by the way, it's a story I tell to my friends, but a lot of people out there, for example, I knew of this one guy. And this guy had the idea that a home is going to be my number one investment. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spend years paying off this home. Once I'm done paying it off, I'm going to be able to have a lot more freedom and flexibility. And everything seems good like this, but the home he bought was too expensive. So when hard times fell on him, he ended up losing this home after years and years and years. And when he had the home, guess what? He still had debt. I think that he still had debt. On top of that, he also didn't have any other investments. So when he lost the home, he lost everything. So it's something you don't want to rely on as your only place where you're actually going to be putting all your money. You never want to put all your eggs in one basket. That's biblical. That's like just common sense. If you put all your eggs in one basket, that basket falls, you're done. It's over. And that's the last thing you want to do. So whenever you're considering building wealth, creating wealth, you don't want to say, well, I'm paying off this expensive home and when it's paid off, I'm going to have that there. Even once you have that there, you still have to use that. And even once you retire and you sell that home, you still have to live that out, okay? So an investment is something that returns money in perpetuity and also retains your capital with an appropriate amount of risk. That is an investment, right? You want to get some money back. You want to basically keep the money you have in there, and you want to make sure the money you actually get back actually makes sense at an appropriate amount of risk. That's an investment. Home is not that. So tell me, if a home isn't that, if a home is not an investment, then what exactly is a home? And should I even consider buying a home? The answer is yes. A home is awesome. But what you actually want to buy and what you actually want to focus on is actually owning a home, not just buying a home. Anyone can buy a home. You know, you got a mortgage, you can qualify for it, obviously. But obviously, not everyone is going to be able to actually own a home. That's the most important factor. So when you consider, hey, I actually want to own a home for all the benefits it brings, that's a whole different conversation. So some of the benefits of actually owning a home are going to be, first, it lowers your cost of living by a lot. Imagine this, okay, guys, most people spend like half or a third of their income on a home. If your home is paid off, guess what? That's taken care of. It also provides a lot less stress. When you don't have to worry about those payments and basically losing your home, that's less stressful, obviously. And on top of that, it gives you more opportunities to do more things with your cash, okay? So if you want to spend the money you spent on the home before, you want to spend it, for example, on more investments, on giving more money out, or for example, maybe doing rental properties. It's all up to you, but it gives you more flexibility in the sense that, hey, now I'm able to make a lot of more better decisions. Now, here's some advice from some very good people that I basically respect a lot. And you have Warren Buffett. He says, whenever you're going to buy a home, when people ask me, when should I buy a home? My answer is always, you should own a home or buy a home when you need a home. You know, don't just take the idea of, my next step in life is to own a home because I have a job and I just graduated and I don't want to spend money on rent. That's terrible. You want to use a rent versus buy calculator to do the math and see exactly, does it make sense for me to actually own a home depending on the state I actually live. So you buy a home when you need a home, okay? I bought a home because where I'm going to be living right now for the next 3-5 years, it makes sense to own a home based on the rental prices. Plus, it gives me a lot of peace knowing that I actually own my home and my value is being retained, and that's fine. Okay. Now, number 2 is Dave Ramsey. He says, your goal should not be to buy a home. It should be to own a home. A lot of folks just focus, for example, on the monthly payments, being able to afford it. But your overall goal should be, I want to own this thing as fast as possible. So the home you buy is going to be the most important factor. So when I had the idea of, I want to buy a $300-something thousand home or a $400,000 home, or when I was in New York, a $700,000 home, those ideas were not bad, right? But based on my income and my possibilities, it made absolutely no sense because I want to be stuck with a mortgage when I could just buy, for example, a home for like $130,000, put in $50,000 into it, and have the optimal home that I actually want and the optimal home I basically need. So a 3-bedroom with a 4-bedroom conversion possibility with 2.5 baths, that to me is more than sufficient. With a 2-person garage thing can fit like 5. For me, I'm telling you guys my personal needs, right? It's my personal home needs, okay? So for me, it makes sense. It's the home I actually could afford, the home I needed, and the home I could afford the fastest. So when you think about owning a home, don't think based on, hey, I want to own something I'm super happy with because this is awesome. It's like when you drive a car for the first time. After you drive it for like 3 months, you stop kind of like loving it, okay? Because it's just a car. It's just a home. You're there for shelter. You're there for a purpose. So make sure the home you buy is a home you can own as fast as possible. That doesn't take away from your flexibility. And third, when you think about me, what I would tell you is, guys, when you're going to buy a home, just use common sense. You know, buy a home based on your personal budget, not based on, for example, interest rates on the current market. Make sure you can afford it. A lot of people go ahead and they impulse buy a 30-year mortgage. That to me is crazy. That's something you want to avoid. Don't just impulse buy something because, hey, interest rates are down. Or, for example, everyone's saying real estate prices are basically down. No, you want to buy based on your current budget and your current possibilities. That is my ultimate advice when it comes to owning a home. So here's a simple rule I follow when it came to buying my own home is, I wanted to buy a home that was no more than a third of my monthly income, including all the costs it actually takes to actually own the home, including insurance, taxes, and everything else, even maintenance in there. So if all those things on a 15-year mortgage are less than a third of my monthly income, then I'm going to be able to actually afford it and try to pay it off faster. So if I can pay it off in 7 to 10 years, that is awesome. Now, I went a little more extreme and I said, I just want to buy something I can pay for right now in cash. And for me, that was a $130,000 investment that I basically made. I put in some extra money into the property and I brought the home up to what exactly I wanted. And to me, that makes the most sense. But it's okay to get a mortgage for like 15 years and pay it off in 15 years. That's awesome because even then, you're doing it in half the time of the average person. But one thing I would also add is, before you buy a home, it's okay to rent. before you buy a home, you should focus on, for example, paying off your debts first, because again, a home is going to be lubrication for your finances, because once the home is paid off, it provides a lot of lubrication in the sense that it makes it a lot more easier to invest more money, to have more fun, to just do a lot more because you have more disposable income. And that's a big factor when it comes to wealth creation. So before you own this home, before you buy this home, before you get into this big, massive investment, consider, for example, paying off your debts first, having a built-in emergency account. So this way, when things go bad, you have money there to kind of be like, okay, I can handle things for 3 to 6 months. And make sure while you're also paying down the home, you're also investing 10 to 20% of your income. This way, you have money and you're actually creating wealth, because in 10 years, what compound interest can do for you is amazing. And in time, just remember, a home provides security. It's not going to be the best investment whatsoever, but it does provide security for you to be able to put more money into really good investments, for example, like the stock market, or into rental properties, or into a business, and so on. And that is it, guys. Okay, so the reason why a lot of the times a home is a #1 wealth killer is because a lot of people have this dream, and that dream leads them to buy something they can't afford, and that idea leads them to make a lot of mistakes. They think I'm going to be happy, but in reality, it doesn't make them happy. It just shackles them and it traps them to something that makes absolutely no sense and steals all the possibilities to actually build wealth. That is it. Thanks for watching. And as always, like this video, comment down below home so I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. On top of that, up here is another video. Over here is my Facebook, subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out. Buying a home is a pretty cool thing, but it would have been a disaster if I bought a home I couldn't afford. I would have regretted it for sure.